Remember that you're a human being with a soul. The divine gift of articulate speech.
I want to be a lady in a flower shop.
She is a princess.
What's to become of me?
I'd like to kill you, you brute. Why didn't you leave me where you found me?
Thanks for watching my film analysis and review of directors Anthony Asquith's and Leslie Howard's 1938 film Pygmalion, based on George Bernard Shaw's 1913 play of the same name and starring Wendy Hiller, Leslie Howard,
I have my own soul, my own spark of divine fire.
Wilfrid Lawson, and Scott Sunderland. If you are new to the channel, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the Godfather of Cinema, movie reviews and more. Give this video a thumbs up, hit the bell, leave a comment and a small donation if you like this video and would like to help me do more like it in the future. Englishman Henry Higgins is a confirmed bachelor.
I have my own soul.
An expert in phonetics. He can pronounce 130 vowels and pinpoint any dialect. Henry Higgins has taught scores of rich American women how to speak proper English. On a dirty corner grows a flower among the squashed cabbage leaves on the ground. An illiterate flower girl named Eliza Doolittle. She has a dream. He jokingly tells a bystander named Colonel Pickering that he could train her to talk and pass her off as a duchess at an ambassador's ball. Little does he realize when saying this that, like him, she is also a good listener and would show up at his home and laboratory.
Here's the young woman, sir.
On Wimpole Street with the money he put in her flower basket out of charity. She wants to pay him to make her a lady. He's made many a lady, but never one as low as Eliza Doolittle. But the challenge of making a respectable lady out of a
Draggle-tailed gutter snipe
like her in only 6 months is irresistible to Henry Higgins' ego, but for one problem. What to do with Eliza Doolittle when he is done making her into a lady. We become what we see, and in Pygmalion, confirmed bachelor and phonetics professor Henry Higgins is used to treating women badly regardless of class. He is used to speaking his mind without thinking, but when Professor Higgins takes on the challenge of transforming a flower girl into a respectable lady, in only 6 months he finds out that you can take a woman out the ghetto, put her in fine dresses, give her expensive jewelry, teach her to talk, walk, and act like a princess.
How kind of you to let me come.
But it is what you do and not what you say that will always be the only teacher at the end of the day. And in this regard, Henry Higgins is an awful teacher. For instance, you would expect someone walking into a business to spend their good money to at least be offered a chair, a cup of coffee, and a smile. Eliza Doolittle pays a cab to take her to Henry Higgins' home.
Step on it!
Where she offers to pay him to train her to be a lady like any other customer, but instead of offering her a chair, a cup of coffee, or a smile, Higgins calls her names, orders his maid to whoop her, makes fun of her speech, and a threat to toss her out of the window, unlike Colonel Pickering, who addresses her politely as Miss Doolittle. And when Higgins and Mrs. Pearce order Eliza to sit in a chair,
Sit down. What's your name?
she refuses until Colonel Pickering politely asks her to sit in the chair, even warning Higgins not to seduce Eliza or take advantage of her while she is staying with him in his home. And Mrs. Pearce has to remind Higgins not to disrespect Eliza by cursing because her parents used to curse, and Mrs. Pearce does not want Higgins to be a bad example for her. Mrs. Pearce also goes on to ask Professor Higgins not to eat breakfast in his night clothes, not to use the sleeves of his shirt for a napkin, not to eat everything off of the same plate. In short, Mrs. Pearce reminds Higgins to not only tell Eliza how to act, talk, walk, and dress like a lady, but to also show her how to act like a lady by conducting himself in front of her like a gentleman.
I know I'm only a common ignorant girl, but I'm not dirt under your feet.
Like Colonel Pickering, who treats her like a lady every time he sees her, and no differently than he treats any other lady.
How do you do, Miss Doolittle?
Higgins orders Mrs. Pearce to burn Eliza's old clothes. Then Pickering and Higgins remake Eliza. They teach her to talk. They dress her, invent new versions of her, take her to classical concerts, and transform her into a genteel lady. And when they take her to the ambassador's ball to test her out, she works.
She's alive! Alive!
Fooling everyone, including Higgins's best student, Count Aristide Carpathy. She dances with the Duke. They call her a princess, and Higgins wins the bet. But to him, she will always be the flower girl he took out the gutter, even though he burned her old clothes and trained her to be a lady. But what now? Her dignity and new way of seeing herself has made her unfit to go back to being the insecure girl they found at Covent Garden. At Higgins's lavish home at 27A Wimpole Street, he and Colonel Pickering congratulate themselves for making Eliza a lady.
Say, what the devil are my slippers? Well, you won your bet.
Now she is an afterthought who once thought that being a lady was knowing how to walk, talk,
How kind of you to let me come.
and wear a dress. But Eliza now knows that all they ever wanted her to be was a robot, a life-size version of their ideal woman, unlike the unconvincing prototype he tested on his mother.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plains.
Killing!
Higgins wanted her to be a robot good enough to fool people into believing that she wasn't. However, it was not Higgins's many lessons over the last 6 months that showed her how to be a lady. It was Colonel Pickering's dignity, decency, and respect for her at all times that taught her how to be a lady.
How do you do, Miss Doolittle?
And though she does not know where she will go now that Higgins and Pickering are done with her, she knows that she can never go back to the corner of Tottenham Court Road where they found her.
I'd like to kill you, you brute. Why didn't you leave me where you found me?
Which brings us to the question of who is good, Higgins, who treats all women like flower girls,
Dare show your temper to me. Sit down and be quiet.
or Colonel Pickering, who treats all flower girls like ladies and equals,
How do you do, Miss Doolittle?
when not even Freddy,
How awfully funny.
who still lives with his mother, Mrs. Eynsford-Hill, treat all men and women as equals. Take the scene in which he accidentally collides with Eliza in the streets
Sorry.
Now then, Freddy!
and runs off instead of helping her pick up the flowers he knocked out of her hands. But after Higgins burns her old clothes, teaches her to speak,
How kind of you to let me come.
Freddy becomes a gentleman
I'm sure I've had the pleasure somewhere.
with the same Eliza, the flower girl, by pulling out her chair, laughing at her jokes,
How awfully funny.
and walking her to the door. Freddy treats Eliza differently than he treats Miss Doolittle, the lady, because in his world there are two types of people, first class and second class people. But in a world of fairness and absolutes, there is only one class of people because each soul is as good or as bad as the other, as Higgins points out to Eliza by asking her if she has ever seen him treat anyone better than he has treated her.
No.
No,
For Higgins and Pickering in their own respective ways are equals, and both good because they are not respecters of persons and treat all equally, irrespective of class.
Dare show your temper to me. Sit down and be quiet.
The old saying, they don't make them like they used to, is the best way to describe a great film like Pygmalion by directors Anthony Asquith and Leslie Howard. Asquith himself also directed the 1951 film The Browning Version, starring Michael Redgrave. At the 11th Academy Awards in 1939, George Bernard Shaw, W.P. Lipscomb, Cecil Lewis, and Ian Dalrymple won the Academy Award for Pygmalion Screenplay, while Leslie Howard and Wendy Hiller were nominated for Best Actress and Best Actor. The film also received a Best Film nomination. The film and script are identical but diverge from each other at the end. The film's ending is upbeat while the script's ambiguous ending is dark and explained by its author George Bernard Shaw without any action or dialogue. In it, Eliza ends up marrying Freddy.
Freddy Hill writes to me twice and 3 times a day.
Who, compared to Higgins, is younger, unsophisticated, manageable,
Awfully funny.
and more likely to spoil her with all of his attention than Higgins, who is more attracted to older, sophisticated women, like his mother, who nurtured his passions for literature, painting, sculpture, music, and affectionate personal relationships, unlike the common mothers that nurture boys like Freddy to idolize sex and women. Without a well-rounded mother to nurture his intellectual and artistic instincts, Henry could have easily wound up like Freddy by wasting all of his sexual energy on young, attractive women like Eliza.
Freddy Hill writes to me twice and 3 times a day.
Note how Freddy worships her at Mrs. Higgins' home, pulling out her chair, laughing at all of her jokes,
Awfully funny.
opening the door for her. You can clearly see that he is not the equal of Higgins, whose coquettish disinterest in her is a fiery ball of sexual and emotional tension that is brought to a powerful and satisfying climax at the end of the film.
Sit down and be quiet. No?
No.
The script also goes on to explain the cold calculation that goes into Eliza's decision to choose Freddy over Higgins, who is 20 years her senior. If she were at the end of youth, beauty, the power to procreate, and needed financial security, she would choose Higgins
Sit down and be quiet.
over Freddy.
Awfully funny.
But being at the peak of sexual pulchritude, having options, and under no immediate pressure to settle, not right away at least, Eliza still has the luxury of time to pick and choose and to be foolish as long as there is no imminent threat to being supplanted by another woman in Henry Higgins' life. Shaw, the author, also suggests that Eliza's calculation in not burning the bridge back to Higgins' life as he had burned her clothes when he took her into his home as his student is typical of every young woman's instinct for self-preservation to have a backup plan
Awfully funny.
in case things with her and Freddy didn't work out. As for the quality of Pygmalion, it was edited by none other than the all-time king of film epics, David Lean. Even if his name is not familiar to you, it's a good chance that his films Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago are familiar to you. Pygmalion is 1 hour and 29 minutes long but feels much shorter, and if you are like me, this is one of those films that you'll want in your collection. If you have trouble finding a physical copy, I would highly recommend that you stream it in order to understand why it's my favorite Wendy Hiller film, along with her 1951 film I Know Where I'm Going by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Criterion did a great job on this film. The picture is clean and sharp. Great mid-tone separation, hardly any dirt, blacks are deep and saturated. So again, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the Godfather of Cinema for more movie reviews. Until next time.